There are different ways for creating a full year calendar by combining multiple functions and typing the weekday headers. I am Nabil Murad. In this tutorial, I show you how to create any year calendar with headers, all with one single function and one single argument. Let's have a look. Now let's build this project from ground up in Excel. Here is my start file. It's a blank file having just some labels and some formatting to organize my work. I will be following a certain concept in this tutorial. I'll be explaining different dynamic array functions, and then I'll be putting all the functions together to create the final project in the calendar worksheet. In any calendar, I do have some headers in the top row, and I want to create the top row dynamically where I have the weekday headers. So in one of the cells, let it be R1, I'll be typing Sunday abbreviated. I hit Ctrl Enter and I drag from the autofill handle to create a full list of weekdays that will be used as headers. I want to create an array of these headers, and to prepare I'm going to use the flash fill functionality to include each one of the weekdays in double quotation. I create the first entry, double quote, Sunday, double quote, and then I hit Ctrl Enter, followed by the flash fill shortcut, which is Ctrl E, and I would have created a full list of weekday headers, each one included in double quotes. Now I want to combine them all in one single array, and I'll be doing that in cell B4. And I'll be using a text join function to do that. So if I type equal text join, and then I hit the tab key, what's your delimiter? I want to separate the weekdays by commas, because comma will correspond to a column. Then I type double quote, comma, double quote, and then I type another comma to move to the next argument. Would you like to ignore empty cells? Sure, why not? I type 1 for true, and then I type a comma to move to the next argument. Where is the range that we want to combine and we want to join separated by commas? I select the 7 days from column S and I close the bracket and then I hit enter. And I get a list of the weekdays, each one included in double quotations, separated by commas. I want to include them in curly brackets to build an array. So I put my function in the edit mode one more time by hitting F2, and before the text join function, I'll be typing an opening curly bracket in double quotation, and I want to join it to the text join function. Then I type Shift 7, the and symbol, the joining operator of Excel, and at the end I want a closing curly bracket. Then I hit Shift 7 one more time, the joining operator of Excel, and in double quotation I type a closing curly bracket. Ctrl Enter. I get an array of the weekdays included in curly bracket. I'm going to copy the contents of B4 and paste them as values, and then type an equal sign. So Ctrl C to copy the contents, and then I want to paste values. I use the shortcut Alt ESV followed by hitting enter. In the formula bar, what if I type an equal sign preceding this array? When I hit enter, I get the header row that will be used in my calendar. The next function that I want to explore is the sequence function. What does the sequence function do? It's a dynamic array function that creates a sequence of numbers, whether in a column or in a row, or an array of multiple rows and multiple columns. So I would like to create a sequence of numbers corresponding to the numbers of weeks I have in any year. So I'll be typing equal sequence. The sequence function asks how many rows you want. In a year, I have 53 rows, but because I'm including the header row as well, then I'll be typing 54, and then I type a comma. How many columns you want? I want one single column, and then I type a comma. What's your start number? I want to start at 1. I type a comma, and then what's the step? The step is 1. When I close the bracket and then I hit enter, I get an array of numbers, and these numbers were created with one single function, the sequence function. It lives in the top row and it spills into the adjacent cells. Let me create another sequence function that I'll be using for creating a drop list for the years. So in cell P1, I type equal sequence, I hit the tab key. I want a sequence, let's say, of 120 rows, which means 120 years. I type 120. You can change the number as needed, and then I type a comma. I want one single column, and then I type a comma. And I want to start, let's say, at 1940, and then I type a comma, and I want a step of 1. When I close the bracket and hit enter, I get the list of years that will be used for my drop list. As I said, the function is created in the top cell and it spills to the adjacent cells so long as I don't have any obstacle on the way, and I have an outline showing the size of the spilled array. I want to use this spilled array in creating my drop list in cell E2, from which I'll be selecting the year I want. To create a drop list, I go to the Data tab of the ribbon and then I click on Data Validation. The Data Validation dialog box opens, and from the Data Validation dialog box, I click on the down arrow and I select List. Alternatively, I can use the shortcut Alt-D-L, Tab-L-Tab. With my blinking cursor in the source box, I want to refer to my sequence function in cell P1. I select it, but I don't want just P1. I want the entire spilled array. Then I have to add the spilled array symbol, which is Shift-3 on my keyboard, the pound sign, and when I hit OK, I would have created my drop list. Let me check. If I click on the down arrow, let's go and select the current year is 2022, and I selected the year for which I'll be creating my calendar. Let me hide these columns. I don't need them for now. I right-click and then hit hide. And I want to talk about another function that I'll be using for building a date. I want to create a full year calendar for 2022. And I want to start from the first day of the year, which is the 1st of January 2022. And to do that, in cell M2, I'm going to build the date by using a date function, equal date, and then I hit tab. The date function requires 3 arguments, the year, which is coming from the drop list in cell E2. I lock it because I'm going to copy it to the right. I hit F4, and then I type a comma to move to the next argument. It's the first month of the year, then I type 1, and then a comma. It's the first day of the first month of the year, then I type 1, and I close the bracket, and then I hit Ctrl-Enter. I want to copy this function to the right, and I'll be creating 2 different types of formatting. I have the same date in both cells, M2 and N2. But for M2, I want to format it as a date. I'll be using the shortcut Ctrl-Shift-3. But in cell N2, I want to reveal the number stored behind the scene. We know that a date is stored in Excel as a number. Day number 1 is the 1st of January, 1900. To reveal this number, which is an incremental number, counting from the 1st of January 1900, I want to switch to the general formatting, which means I want to strip off the formatting. I use the shortcut Ctrl-Shift-tilde, but if you look in the number group on the Home tab, you will see that it says General. The 1st of January 2022 is perceived by Excel as 44,562. Which day of the week was that? Then I'll be creating a text function in cell M3 that will return the day of the week. So I type equal text, and then I hit tab. What's the value? I select the cell above M2, and then I type a comma. The second argument of the text function, how would you like to format the result? I want to format it as day abbreviated like the headers in row number 4. Then I type in double quotation D. D stands for date. I close the double quotation and I close the bracket. When I hit enter, the 1st of January 2022 was a Saturday. I have some conditional formatting stored in these cells and I can see that Saturday is in blue, just to recognize the first day of the year. If you count starting from Sunday up to the last day, which is Saturday, if Sunday is considered number 1, then Saturday should be considered number 7. What's the weekday in number? I use a weekday function to extract the weekday in numbers. And I do that by typing equal weekday. I hit the tab key, weekday of what? Weekday of the same date in cell M2, and then I type a comma. What do you consider day number 1 of the week? I'm considering Sunday as day number 1. You can select a different option if you want. Then I'll be selecting the first number, which is 1, which means that Sunday is day number 1. This argument is called the return type. I close the bracket and then hit enter, and sure enough, Saturday is day number 7. When I created my weekday function, I referred to the date function in cell M2. I want to create both of them in one single standalone function. Then I'll be typing in cell M5 equal weekday. I hit the tab key. Weekday of what? Weekday of the date. So I type date and I'll build the date. I click on cell E2 and then I type a comma. I want the first month. I type 1, comma. I want the first day. I type 1 and I close the bracket for the date function. The second argument of the weekday function, if I type a comma, it's the return type, and we agreed that Sunday will be day number 1. Then I want to type 1 to recognize Sunday as the first day of the week. When I close the bracket, this is a standalone function. Then when I hit enter, of course, it's returning 7 because Saturday is day number 7. Now I want to create one more sequence function for the numbers that will appear in the body of my calendar. So I select cell B5, I type equal sequence, and then I hit tab. How many rows do you want? In a year, I have 53 rows. Then I type 53, but later on I'll be changing this number because I want to include the header row. Then I'll change it to 54 when I combine all the functions together. I then type a comma. How many columns do you want? Each row represents 1 week. Then it should include 7 columns. Then I type 7. I type a comma. What's the start number? I want to start at 1. And then I type a comma. I want a step of 1. Then I close the bracket and I hit enter. And I would have created a sequence of numbers that should represent the numbers in the body of my calendar. When I created this sequence function, I started counting at 1. While actually I'm building a calendar for 2022. And the first day of 2022 should be the number we see in cell N2, 44,562. Then what if I put this function in the edit mode and I copy it? Control C to copy, and then I hit escape. I put my sequence function in the edit mode F2, and I change the starting number by pasting the date function, which will return the first day of 2022. Control V to paste. When I hit enter, look at that. Everything is changing. And I'm starting from 44,562, which is the first day of 2022. I can format these numbers. So I select the top row, and then I hit Shift Control down arrow, and I format it by hitting the shortcut Control Shift 3. Now everything appears in dates. I can expand these 2 columns. I was able to build the calendar, but I have a problem. The 1st of January 2022, according to the text function and the weekday function, should be day number 7 and should start on Saturday. And because I created my sequence function in the first cell of the calendar under Sunday, then it starts counting from the first day of the year. I would like to push the first day of the year to become a Saturday, or in other terms, I want the number returned in cell B5, where I create my sequence function, to be 6 days prior to the first day of the year. So if I subtract 6 from this function, that will adjust the date. And I'm going to do that in the formula bar. In the third argument, where I have the date function, I want to subtract 6, and I hit enter, and that brings the first day of the year in the proper position. Although I did it, but I did it manually, we want to make it dynamically. We need to subtract 6 from the third argument of the sequence function to move the starting day of the year to its proper position. And to make it dynamic, I'm going to subtract the weekday function. But the weekday function is returning 7. Then I'll be adding 1. So let me copy the weekday function. I copy it, Control C. I hit Escape, and then I put my sequence function in the edit mode F2. And instead of having -6, I replace this 6 by the weekday function, Control V. And because the weekday function is subtracting 7, then I need to add 1 plus 1, and that will make my calendar dynamic, and I have the first day of the year in the proper position. Let me test by changing 2022 to any different year. If I select 2019, then I have the first day of 2019 on a Tuesday, and my calculation in column M confirms that it should be a Tuesday, and now everything is working fine. I created a sequence function in cell J4. I created an array formula in cell B4, and I created a sequence function in cell B5. I would like to copy the three functions and combine them together. Let's see, how am I going to do that? I want to hide some columns that I don't need for now to make some room. So I'll be selecting columns L, M, N, and I hit the shortcut Control 0 to hide the columns. I want to copy the different functions, starting with the sequence function in cell B5. I want to open the Office clipboard, clear whatever I have, and I want to copy this sequence function with the nested date and weekday functions. I copy it by hitting copy, and I have it in the Office clipboard. I hit escape, and I want to copy the function in B4. This is the formula that returned the array of weekday headers. I copy it by clicking on copy, and I have it in the Office clipboard, and then I hit escape, and finally I want to copy this sequence function without the equal sign, and I have the three functions in the Office clipboard. To make some room, I'm going to close for now. And I want to delete this function and delete the function in cell B5 as well. We'll be combining all these functions in one single function. I'm still keeping this sequence function just to explain the concept. I'll be putting all my functions in one single if function. And this if function will evaluate a logical test. If the result of this sequence function is greater than 1, which means 2, 3, 4, 5, then please go ahead and return the sequence function that I had in B5. Otherwise, return the array of weekday headers. So let's get started typing equal if, and then I hit tab. What's my logical test? Let's open the Office clipboard. I select the sequence function, and I say if it is greater than 1, that's my logical test. I type a comma. What do you want? If the logical test returns a true, if it's greater than 1, in this case, I want my sequence function. Then I select the sequence function, but because now I'm moving it one row up, then I want to return 54 rows, and I replace the 53 by 54. I click at the end, and now the last argument of the if function, if it's not greater than 1, what do you want to return? Then I want the array of weekday headers, and I click on it, and I close the bracket for the if function. When I hit enter, I was able to build my calendar with one single function. I have a little issue right now. I combined the three functions in one bigger if function, and it returns the entire calendar with the headers. And because I created my function in cell B4, then you will see that the calendar starts at the 6th of January 2019. There is a shift of 1 full week, which is the equivalent of 1 full row. Then in this case, I need to subtract 7 days to compensate for the full row of shifting. Let me put my function in the edit mode F2, and then I click after the +1 and I type -7. That should adjust the starting date of the year, and it will appear in its correct position. When I hit enter, now I have the 1st of January 2019 appearing as a Tuesday, which is correct. Let me switch to another year. So if I select 2022, the first day of 2022 is a Saturday, and it appears in the proper position, and I was able to create my calendar using one single function. Now I can delete this sequence function. I don't need it anymore, and I can close the Office clipboard for now, and I have all the functions in one single cell. Every time I want to create a calendar, I need to build this long function. I want to make it much easier for the user. So I'm going to take all this bunch of functions with the if, the sequence, the second sequence, the weekday, and the date, and the array at the end. I want to put them in one single lambda function. What does the lambda function do? The lambda function allows me to create a custom function, a function that will appear in the IntelliSense list along with the built-in functions of Excel. And when I create the lambda function, I will be able to define a variable and use this variable inside the if function. The only variable that I have, which is the only cell that I'm selecting, which is the only value that the user needs to provide, it's the year coming from the drop list in cell E2. And E2 appears in 2 locations in this huge function. So what if I copy this if function and I store it inside a lambda function? I'm going to copy it, Control C, and then I hit escape. To store it in a lambda function, I need to do that in a defined name. So if I go to the Formulas tab of the ribbon and I look at the name manager, I don't have any names so far, and I'll be creating a named range that will store the lambda function. Usually we do that by clicking on Define Name, and I give a name to my lambda function, and I type or I paste my function in the Refers To box with some modifications. I'm going to hit Cancel. We have a new functionality that has been recently added into Excel. It's available on the right side of the Home tab. It's called the Advanced Formula Environment. And the Advanced Formula Environment makes it easier for me to create the lambda function and save it as a defined name. If you don't have the Advanced Formula Environment, you can easily download it. It's an add-in. You go to the Insert tab of the ribbon, you click on Get Add-in, and in the search box you type Advanced Formula Environment. And then I click on Search, and here at the Advanced Formula Environment, I just click Add, and it will be added to the right side of the Home tab. I don't need to do that, then I'm going to close, and I'll go right away to the Home tab of the ribbon and click on Advanced Formula Environment. It opens the Advanced Formula Environment pane on the right-hand side, but to make it easier for me to use it, I'm going to undock it by dragging it from the title and moving it somewhere in my worksheet, and then I'm going to expand it to get a better view. To start creating my lambda function, I click on this plus sign. It asks me about the name that I want to assign to this function, and because it builds a calendar, I'm going to name it calendar. And in the Refers To box, I'm going to create my lambda function. I click in the box and I type lambda. And for the lambda function, I have one single variable. The lambda function allows me to collect a parameter from the user or an input value from the user, and I'm going to name this parameter or input value that I want the user to provide. I'll be naming it Y, short for year, and then I type a comma. What does this Y do? This Y should replace cell E2 wherever it exists in the if function. Then I paste my if function that I copied earlier. Now I can see the different occurrences of cell E2. I select the first occurrence and I replace it by Y. I select the second occurrence and I replace it by typing Y. And I finished creating my lambda function. I want to add it, then I click on Add, and it appears in the Advanced Formula Environment pane. I'm going to dock this pane back in place by dragging it until it docks into place, and now I can see that my lambda function is a lot easier to read with the nested if, sequence, weekday, and date function. Let's go ahead and use this function. So if I go to calendar, the first worksheet, where I want to test this function, I will bump into a problem. So when I start typing in cell B4 equal calendar, I don't see the function popping up in the IntelliSense list of Excel. And the reason for this, the name calendar is not yet stored in the name manager. So if I go to the formulas tab of the ribbon, I click on name manager, I don't see the name calendar. So I'm going to close it, and to have this name appear in the name manager, I need to click on this button to synchronize what I have in the advanced formula environment with the name manager. When I give it a click, you will see a check mark that will appear before switching back to the same icon. I click here, here is the check mark, and now the name should be stored in the name manager. Let me check. I click on name manager, and here you go. Now I can close my advanced formula environment and I can start enjoying my function. Equal calendar, and look at that. I can see the calendar function in the IntelliSense list of Excel. If I hit tab, the screen tip prompts me for one single argument. Where is your Y? Your Y is the year that you want to use for building the calendar. So if I select whatever comes from the drop list in cell E2 and I close the bracket, look at the beauty of this function. I hit enter and I was able to build an entire full year calendar with headers just with one single function and one single argument. If I change the year and I select a different year, let's go to 2019, everything is dynamic and everything updates. I have multiple conditional formatting rules stored in this range. I'm going to write these rules for you in the description below the video. And now you can enjoy this single function with one single argument and create any full year calendar in your workbook. If you want to learn more and rock with dynamic array functions, you can join my upcoming live course where I cover all the dynamic array functions in a full day training. The course registration link is in the description below this video. And if you enjoyed this training video, give it a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe to my channel to be notified when new tutorials are released. The best is yet to come. Thanks for watching and see you next time.